All right, so we're going to take a look at Vassal, which is a software platform that's been around for, geez, quite a while now. I started using Vassal, I think, back in early to mid 2000. I think 2007, 2008 is when I started to kind of work on designing modules. And so just to kind of give you an overview of what we're dealing with, I'm going to share my Vassal screen here. Vassal is a software package that you can get from VASSALengine.org. If you go to the website, you can download this onto a Mac or a PC. It'll work on both platforms. As far as I know, it is not tablet ready yet. I know there's a few guys with programming experience that have tinkered around with getting it on a tablet, but there's no official tablet ready app for it. But I think it's trending in that direction. There's an active team of developers that work on this on a volunteer basis. It's a free program. You don't have to pay anything to get it. And once you install the Vassal software, it becomes like a master program that'll run a wide range of a variety of games. And those games would correlate with something you would buy off the shelf at a Wargame store. I have quite a few modules that I've designed over the years, and I was just going to pull up a couple here just to kind of give you a sense of it. But just to give you an overview of what Vassal does for you is it allows you to play a game like Littoral Commander, Baltic. You can play that game over the internet with your friends without having to be in the same environment with one another. So if you don't have a group local, you can play with people online. And that's enabled us to play games like I work a lot with GMT. And so games like Here I Stand or Virgin Queen, where you need 6 players, it's an intense, immersive game experience. You want to be able to do it, but it's hard to get 6 people that are dedicated to that kind of game to play it. With Vassal, it enables you to do that. You can play the game online, live. You can also play by email. And that's originally how I began to play. It was just by email, just sending move files back and forth. But over the years, with the advent of communication platforms like Zoom and Discord, you can play you can play the game online live, very, very easy now. So that's basically what Vassal is. It was originally designed around games with a hex grid, and so I'm going to pull up a game here I've been working on. Let's just pull up Rebel Fury. And I'll see if this works for you guys. I want to make sure that, you know what? I'm going to have to stop the share and try something different because it doesn't want to open that way. There we go. Okay, when you open up a Vassal module, basically it opens up, and I'll reshare this. It opens up from your library, the main screen I was sharing earlier. That's like a library of modules that maybe you've downloaded over the years. When you first install the software, you won't have anything in there, but you can go to the modules section of the VASSALengine.org website, and you can find there are thousands of modules available to download. And so once you get those on your computer, all you got to do is tell the Vassal software, you go to File, open a module, and you'll be able to find stuff like Rebel Fury. This is one I did recently for GMT Games. And most modules will begin with a start screen, something like what you see here, where you're given the opportunity to start a game online. You can look for a game that's already in progress, or you can load a save game file. Just for the sake of this demo, I'm going to hit Start Game Online, or Start a New Game Offline. And then you can choose a setup. Most modules will have a predefined setup or two. Let's just throw up Chancellorsville. And then you'll get the opportunity to sign in, join the game either as an observer, which is default, that just lets you look at the game other people could be playing. There's no limit that I know of to how many people can observe a game in progress. There's a limitation on people that can occupy a player seat, like the CSA, USA, or I always throw in a solo player. And I do that so that I have master access to everything in the module. So I'm going to choose that now for the sake of this demo. All right, now I think I lost my shared screen. So there it is back again. That's what pops up this is mainly what you're going to see whenever you load up a Vassal module, is then you'll begin to see the game playing surface that's, you know, particular to that game that you're going to play. Vassal is designed around a hex grid style of war game, but that's not a limitation of the software. You can do so many things with Vassal. You can do miniatures games, tabletop stuff can be done with Vassal. Games that don't use a hex grid can use Vassals. We'll show that in just a moment. But this is basically the main interface. Is you'll see the main playing surface. You can scroll around, and as you scroll around, you can see how, you know, having a large monitor or a dual screen setup on your computer, that can be helpful if you're playing a big game. And one of the reasons why a player might choose to use Vassal and play it locally is I can put a monster size war game on Vassal and play it, whereas I don't have the table space in, say, if I had a small apartment or if I'm on the road, maybe in a motel, whatever, I don't have space to set a game like this up. This allows me to do that. So that's another reason to use Vassal. But this is basically what you start with. And so if you're going to play a game online, what you'd want to do is one player would have to set the game up. So I might sign in like this, and I would choose what player side I wanted to play. And then I would open up using the button on the toolbar. There's always going to be a button. It might have a different icon, but there will always be a button on the main toolbar that will allow you to enable a server panel. It'll show or hide the server controls. Once you have, oh geez, sorry about that. There we go. Once you have the server control panel open up, what you want to do is you want to connect to the server, to the Vassal engine server. And so the dual arrow button on the controls here, when you press that, it will log you into the server. It'll throw you into what's known as the main room. You can't play a game in there. It just gets you into a concentrated meeting place. Everyone's going to pop into a main room. But to start a game online, what I'd want to do is I would set up my own game, Joel's game. And then I hit create. And now I've got a folder that other people can join. So other players, what they would do is they would load the same module. But when they got to that splash screen and it gave you the option to start a game online, look for a game online, or load a save game file, you would choose to look for game online. It would, by default, open this panel up, connect you to the server, and then you would immediately see Joel's game folder. And all you have to do, I think, is just double click on that folder. And I think it causes you to join. If it doesn't do that, then all you have to do is expand the folder, right click on my name, choose synchronize, and bang, it'll give you the option to join as a particular player. You choose what player role that you want. So if it's a 2-player game, your opponent has already selected one of the player seats, so you would select the other one. And within a few seconds, you would see the same display as your opponent. What's really nice about Vassal is I can scroll around, but my opponent doesn't see that. So you're scrolling around and you're zooming in and out. Like I can zoom way out and see the whole map. I can zoom in a little bit closer and see things a little bit in more detail. Whenever I do that, it doesn't reflect that for my opponent. So your displays are independently controlled. It's not synchronized. But whenever I move a game piece, like if I take the McClaw's division here, or brigade, and if I move this unit down here, my opponent will see the piece move, but he won't necessarily see me scroll my screen around. So everything that I change to the game state in terms of the positioning of game pieces, everyone that's logged into the game is going to see that. So that's the cool thing about playing online and playing a live game. Vassal is really built for that. You can play games over the internet by logging save game files. You can sync. You go up to file and you choose to begin a log file. That's what it is. You begin a log file, and then as you move stuff around, it will log all of your moves. And then when you're done, you just tell it, I'm done with my logged moves. You send that file by email to your opponent. He loads it, plays through it, The controls for that will display up in the display section here at the top of your screen. You'll see this display section up here, and they would be able to step through your moves and see it, and then begin their own log file. To me, it feels a little bit more cumbersome than playing live. So most players just choose to play live and not use the email function, but you could do that if you wanted to. Now, getting around the Vassal interface is super easy. Vassal's designed as a graphic user interface, and so you just take your mouse and you're going to use that to left click to select pieces. Like if I select General Lee here, the piece is selected. If I left click and drag, he moves, and you can kind of see him just kind of ghost as I move him around. To discover what you can do with a game piece beside dropping and dragging around the map, right click is your buddy in Vassal. I mean, right click on everything. And when you right click on something, you immediately see there's all kinds of options. And so what I recommend that you do is before you play a game with anyone, load up that Vassal module and play around with it and try to discover, okay, what did the designer do? What tools did he include in here to make this as user-friendly as possible? So for this module, I made it so the game piece can flip over, because in the physical game, these game counters have two sides to them. I also made it so you could rotate the game pieces around. The game doesn't require that, but I just think it's cool when you have your units in battle mode and they, face each other. So that was just something I did on my own that maybe others wouldn't use, but I think it's kind of cool. You can place markers on the board like an attack arrow. And if I right click on the attack arrow, I can choose to delete it and get rid of it. I can clone it and make another one. And now I've got two of them here. I can choose to rotate those arrows around. Let's see, what else can I do? Oh, I can change a label to it. And I can tell it things like my intentions. Like I could say, this guy's going to do a 1-to-1 attack and he's going that way. You can do all kinds of things with this module because of what the designer has included. And every module is going to be maybe a little bit different, but it just shows you the flexibility of Vassal. If you want to be able to put notes and things on game pieces, the designer can certainly go in and add that capability. But to discover what's there, right click on things and then experiment with it. That's the easiest way to learn. Now, one of the trickiest things that new users will find with Vassal is the stacking of game pieces. So I just moved a couple of game pieces here. We'll just create a stack of game pieces. Now, if I click on this stack, you'll notice it selected everybody. And if I drag and drop, it moves the whole crowd. And maybe I don't want to do that. So how do I separate a stack? What you do is you take your mouse and you double click, left click on that stack, and everything will separate slightly. In my modules, I make the separation a little bit more exaggerated than in others. So it might be more subtle in different modules than what you're seeing here, but they will slightly separate. And then you can left click on individual pieces. And using the arrow keys on your keyboard, you can use the up arrow to send something to the top of the stack. Down arrow will send it to the bottom of the stack, and left and right will actually increment it up and down. But of course, I added a rotate feature to the arrows, so it does something a little wonky there. But you can also just, drag and drop away from the stack, and then you can choose to reorder it. To build a stack, you just drop onto a pre-existing piece. If I left click away and deselect, I can then left click and reselect what I have there. And now all three of those units will then be able to move around. And once you kind of fiddle around with this a little bit, it becomes quite easy to navigate and to use. This module is designed so that the game pieces conform to the hex grid more or less. I have it designed so that they will stick to the center of the hex or to the vertices. And the reason for the vertices is sometimes I wanted to have a piece offset slightly, usually for some kind of graphic effect. If I was going to do a screenshot on X or put something up on a forum somewhere, that's the rationale for it. But a lot of hex grid games would simply snap to the middle of a hex. And so that should give you a pretty good idea of what you can do with Vassal in terms of navigating the interface. Now I'm going to stop sharing the screen and I'm going to load a different module for you, because a lot of war games now have cards, and cards throw some new things into the mix. So I'm going to load up a module I did recently for GMT Games. It's one of their coin modules. And the reason I'm loading this one is, hold on a second. It's asking me to insert data. Oops. The reason I'm loading this module is because there's a variety of things that will be helpful to see, and I have them all included in one module here. So join a solo. There we go. All righty. Let me share this screen for you. All right. This is Red Dust Rebellion. It's one of the coin games, and you see it's not a hex grid kind of a game. It's a very different kind of game in terms of the playing surface being it consists of different zones of different shapes. And so with this module here, you'll notice when I move things around, if I move pieces to a new place, it will report up in the reporting section up at the top of your screen. And all Vassal modules will also have a chat bar where I can type in messages to my opponent if I don't have voice comms. But nowadays, most people use Discord or something for voice comms. But if you wanted to type something out, you can send a message to everybody using the chat bar. That's particularly useful if you're doing a logged move file for playing by email. I forgot to mention that feature exists. Something else I should mention to you about the interface I forgot to mention is the zoom capability. Every module has zoom buttons, I think, at the top of the screen. And by clicking on those, you can zoom in and out to a certain degree. I find it very helpful, especially if you have a large screen or a dual screen setup. If you click on the middle zoom button, you'll usually have an option to fit the width of your screen, and that allows you to, at a glance, put the whole playing surface in front of your face. And then all you got to do is scroll up and down if the whole thing doesn't quite conform to the shape of your screen setup. But that's a cool feature that I think a lot of players will use. If you're zoomed way out, sometimes it's hard to read a piece, and so if you hover the mouse over a game piece, it'll show you a blown up version of those game pieces. And some modules, it'll be set up to show you even the terrain of the space that they occupy. I didn't choose that feature for this module because terrain's less of a nuanced thing, but in the hex grid game I just showed you a moment ago, it would do that. All right, in a module like this, I've included like hotspots around the module so you can right click on things and allow it to generate pieces from the available stock. And so I think, yeah, if I right click on these little displays where it says neutral or whatever, I can tell this thing to have passive support. I can tell it to generate game pieces from the available stock. I can send pieces here. That's something else that you're only going to discover that if you read the module instructions. That may or may not be included with the module file. Some designers don't include module instructions. I've been trying to include them in the help window. You can go to the help window and it says module instructions. Click on that, and it'll tell you all of the main things you'll need to discover. But most of the things that's in there you can discover on your own simply by right-clicking and experimenting. But I wanted you to be alert to some modules having some advanced functionality allows you to shift pieces and move them around without having to drag and drop them. In this module here, if I want to send a game piece back to its available stock, I just right-click on it and choose to return, and it'll send the game piece back to the available stock down here. This module is also set up to keep track of how many pieces of that type are located in that available stock. As it is right now, there are 6 more of these hexagonal pieces available to the corporations. When I send these discs back here, I can also, instead of right clicking, just use a shortcut key. When you right click on a piece, it'll show you a keyboard shortcut. And in this case, a Control R will send the game piece back to its available stock. So you'll see it filled up the space here. If I do it like so, whoops, you'll see that the game piece shifted locations. And so that's something else you want to be sensitive to. Some modules have more advanced functionality to them. But the real reason I showed you this module here is because of the way cards work in it. There's a game deck in this module. And in this particular game, only one of the players actually has a private hand of cards. So I'm just going to show you how that works, how it's set up here. And in this game, the Church of the Reclaimer has a hand of cards. They can hold on to these things. And there's a couple ways that you can draw cards into your hand. Usually a hand consists of a private separate window accessible from the toolbar. You click on the button, it shows it, click on the button again, it hides it, or you can hit the X button and hide it that way, but you can always get that window back. If you're synchronized with other players, your opening and closing of windows is private to you. Other players won't see that. But when you open up that hand, you can drag and drop pieces from the main playing surface into your hand. So I could take a card off of this deck, and if I drag it away, I'm going to see what that card is, and everyone else is going to see it. So maybe what I want to do is draw the card while clicking and left. I've got a left click, and I'm holding the click, dragging it to this window and dropping. I've now drawn a card privately into my hand. No one else sees that. All they see is what's reported up here, and that is that I've moved a card into my hand here. I've also set it up. You'll see that there's little rectangular spaces to accommodate a card. And what you can do is you can actually left click on these little plus markers, and it'll draw a card to your hand. And the game is really designed, this module is really designed for you to use that functionality rather than manually dragging and dropping. Because I don't know if you noticed, but when you manually drag and drop, it actually announces what that card is, or gives you the identity of the card. A clever player might know what that card can do. So, use the little built-in function I've included that might make it a little bit more private. But that just gives you an idea of how cards can work in the game. And then right-clicking on cards allows you to do a couple things with them, namely flipping a card face down. You'll notice that when I flip this card face down, let me move it to a different spot here so you can see it better. I'm just going to move it out onto the main playing surface. And you'll see that I am the owner of this card. I'm the one that chose to flip it face down. When I hover my mouse over it, I see a blown up version of it that allows me to see, what that card actually is. But I've also designed it so at a glance, without hovering my mouse over it, I can actually see what the card is. But all of my opponents, what they're going to see is they're going to see the back of the card. They'll see just this. And so that's another thing to keep in mind is Vassal allows you the functionality of having private information like you would in a physical game. If you're playing a game that has blocks that the owner can see, but everyone else, the information is hidden, Vassal will be able to accommodate stuff like that. And so I would be able to manipulate my blocks just like I'm manipulating this card, sight unseen to my opponents, until I choose to reveal it to everybody, either by right-clicking on it or using the keyboard shortcut. And then I can choose to also discard it, and that throws it over here to the discard pile. And so that shows you how cards can work in the game. Dice, and the way that cards are built, some decks, if you right-click on a deck, it might tell you that you can grab more than one card. Like this module, you can grab as many cards as you want. I can grab the whole deck at once if I wanted to. Say I want to grab 2 cards, I could just right-click on this deck. It gives me this little input box. I type 2, hit OK, left-click, drag away. It's just drawn me 2 cards. So if you right-click on decks, it will give you an option. Sometimes it'll allow you to draw a specific item. So if I right-click on the discard pile for these orange cards, It'll give me the option to reshuffle, which will basically take these cards and throw them back into the deck, or allow me to draw a specific card, in which case it'll have this little dialog box. I can select genetic masking, click OK. Then when I drag and drop away, I've selected that exact card. So to find out what a deck can do, right click on it and you'll see the options. In this module, every pull from the main deck is a random pull. It's designed that way by the module designer. And so if I throw anything back in the draw pile, this draw pile is continuously shuffled. So when I right click on this and choose reshuffle, all it did was it basically take the cards that were in discard and threw them into the draw pile. And so that's another thing to keep in mind is, again, I can't emphasize enough, right click, right click, right click. That's going to be your buddy. There are dice in Vassal. On the toolbar of this module, you click on this and it'll roll some dice. You'll see the images of the dice in the toolbar button itself. Not every module will have that. Some modules, it's an unchanging icon here, and the result is only reported in the chat bar, as you'll see. I don't know if this will work, but yeah, right here is where it would be reported. There's controversy. I don't really know enough about this to speak one way or the other, but there is controversy about the die roller in Vassal. Some people say it's not random enough. So some users suggest using an alternate internet die roller option. So your mileage may vary there. I just thought I'd point that out, that there is some controversy there, but frankly, I've just always used it, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Lots of modules will have functionality up here on the toolbar. To find out what a button does, just hover your mouse over it, click on it, and you'll see this particular module has buttons that move scoring track markers around, so you don't have to drag and drop things. If you find that inconvenient, you can or inconvenient, you can actually use these toolbar buttons. Sometimes it's easier if you got to move something like 11 spaces to just, I can remember by clicking 11 times, and that's the reason I put that functionality in there. Some modules will include a functionality to hide game pieces temporarily. This module doesn't have that, or it's hidden from me. No, I didn't include that one in this module. Some modules will have it. You click on a button on the toolbar, it'll make every game piece go away. So all you see is the map or the game board. If you click on that, it's only doing it for you. Unless the module's been specifically programmed otherwise. It takes a little bit of effort, but you can program a module to do it for everybody. But generally speaking, when you use the hide pieces button, it's just so you can see the underlying map. It only does it for you. You're not blinding the other players and so forth. Most modules will have a pieces tray. It's accessible from the toolbar. When you click on this, it opens up this little box, and sometimes there's multiple tabs with different kind of pieces in here, and there is an infinite number of these pieces. So when you drag them onto the board, they become available and visible to everyone else that's logged in or synchronized with you. And again, if you're playing a game where maybe you're not supposed to have an infinite number of a particular piece, make sure you're not cheating. Most of the modules I design, if I know that there's a finite number of a particular kind of piece, and it's important to the game that there's only that number of pieces, I won't put them into an infinite pieces tray. I'll put them somewhere else in the module, so you only have that number. And that's why you'll see little decks of game pieces like the orbit markers here. That's so that we don't end up with too many of something, or too many cubes or octagonal pieces or discs. But these pawns aren't really important to the game in that respect. You can have as many of these as you need to mark things. And so just dragging onto the game surface, you can put as many of these out here as you want. And then when you're done with them, you can either delete them one by one, or some modules have a way to get rid of all of these things at once. Like this button here will delete all the pawns on the board at one time. Most pieces that are in a infinite pieces tray like this have some kind of a delete feature, so you don't end up dragging something on and then you got too many of something and you can't get rid of them. Most modules will have some way to get rid of them. Last, I think I haven't mentioned is, okay, if I need to retire from the game, if I need to like quit so somebody else can join and take over my role in the game, you can click on the retire button. And what this does is it tells you what your current player seat is. I'm occupying the player side solo. And the reason for that is it gives me master access to the module. Basically, there's nothing hidden to me if I'm signed in as solo. But say I want to join, I started the game solo, but now I want to play with some other people. Maybe I'll choose to join as the corporations. Click OK. When I did that, you'll notice that I can no longer access that private hand window. And so if you got a game going on where you maybe signed in as one player seat, that's the way that you could relinquish your seat, allow somebody else to play. Yeah, because sometimes that happens. Sometimes someone will be meeting up for like a weekly game of something, and then they just kind of drop off the radar. Life gets busy, and they can't commit or they can't play. So you need to get someone else to take over the role. What you'd need to do is you need to get that player to resign their seat, and then you could get a new player to join. And all they'd have to do then is go through the process I showed you earlier, look for a game online. They would see the game that you got going here. When they opened up the module, the server control panel would be open. They would see your folder here with your game in it. They would just choose to join that game, and then the only seat available would probably be the one that was just vacated by the no-show player. That, I think, in a nutshell, is how to use Vassal. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and stop. And if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Joel, first of all, thank you. As someone who early in my kind of wargaming career was also exposed to Vassal and thrown into it, you've covered, I mean, literally everything I would want to know about how to use it that I had to figure out kind of painstakingly. I think the beauty of Vassal and why it's important to have something like Vassal, especially if you're a young wargamer, is that virtual TTXs allow you especially to play test your own games, you know, with a community of people that's much, much wider than you can get at your workplace or at home. Personally, I've had such success playtesting my games on Vassal that every time I'm making a new game, I ask if there's some sort of way I can have a digital desktop for it so I can Shanghai people into playtesting with me. And the advantage of Vassal too is that if you're a government client, Vassal will work on those computers. Tabletop Simulator will not, because it will melt their graphics cards, but Vassal, for all its quirkiness, still will. So, Joel, thank you for showing us how to use that today. I will pitch it off to anyone if anyone else has any questions.
I would mention that if you go to the vassalengine.org website, the documentation is so much better now than it was 20 years ago. So learning Vassal, you can find videos online in addition to what we just did here. You'll see all kinds of content exists on YouTube to not only learn the software but also learn how to play these games. As a designer myself, Walter mentioned it, but Vassal was the primary way in which playtesting was done before you spend the money to create a physical playtest kit. That's an investment, a time investment. It costs money to print stuff, but you can really weed out a lot of problems with your game design by using Vassal, and it's so flexible. You can do so many different things with it. It allows me to test out all kinds of things before I'm committed to printing materials. The design end of it is a whole nother, that would require a whole nother set of tutorials. But there's quite a lot of content on the Vassal website that'll teach you how to use it, but then also how to design your own modules. So if you want to build your own game prototype, you can do that.
Joel, I think I've, not to blow up your spot, I think I have seen on YouTube you actually have a series of tutorials about how to program Vassal. I think that you made for GMT or some such thing. I was looking at this a while
Yes.
back. Uh,
They're pretty old. Some of the syntax has changed slightly. I really ought to redo them, but more or less, I think the video still, the content is still valid. Just some of the syntax I use might be slightly different now.
mm, mm, I've got it.
But that would be only on the very advanced end of those videos.
Oh, okay, okay. So it's fine if I drop those in the chat.
Yep.
1 second. Let me find them first of all, now that I've mentioned them.
Yeah, there's like, I think maybe like 5 or 6 of them. I think it was only in the Vassal, like I think it said 201 or so. I got into some advanced techniques, and what I shared, I'm not sure it would work exactly the way I used to do it. They've actually made it easier now.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah, they improved the syntax so it's easier to design what I was doing before.
Perfect, perfect. 1 second. I've actually found, I think that's the one I was watching ages and ages ago. Uh, and it's one of a couple lessons you have on there. I would like to thank you, Joel, for showing out. I think this is important for the community to kind of know how to keep this little tool handy. And again, as someone who my first exposure to Vassal was very rough and I hated it. Way back in the aughts, it was recommended for miniature gaming because the measurements were very accurate. And that was my first exposure to it. But as someone now who play tests a lot of games, I found it really invaluable. Uh, Ruizzi asked a question. He asked, how long did it take you to develop your first Vassal module?
Yeah, I think the first one I ever tried to do might have been one of the Crusader games for GMT, and I don't know, maybe like 20 hours, maybe. The hardest part is cutting is you have to basically have an individual image for every side of every game piece. What I mean by that is if I've got a deck of cards, for example, I need to have each card has to be its own image. And then the image that would be on the reverse side of all those cards would have to be its own image. If I have counters, like a counter sheet, I need to have an individual file for every single game piece image and its reverse side. So the most time consuming part is what I call processing the art, where I take a software platform like Photoshop or GIMP or whatever, and basically have to create individual PNG files or JPEG files. I usually use JPEG for the maps and then PNG files for the game pieces, but that's the most time consuming part. And then they've made it a lot faster now to import those graphics then into the Vassal editor. And depending on how many pieces you have, it could take anywhere from, I could do a module in an evening if it's a simple game, or it could be something where it's going to take me a number of evenings over the course of a couple of weeks to be able to put it together.
Perfect. And they also asked, how easy or hard is it for someone without a coding or programming background to learn how to develop Vassal?
I don't think you really need that. Sometimes, having that background will help you to do some of the advanced things. But if you just want to do a quick and dirty Vassal module, you don't need to have really any of that, because the well, here, you know what? I've got this open. I could just show you. Give me just a second here. I'm going to go into edit mode and I'll share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about, because that will make it a little bit easier to, let's see. I'm just going to share my whole screen here. All right. So I have that Rebel Fury game in edit mode. When you open up Vassal into the editor, you're going to see a window here that's got like a tree of folders, and each of these folders has sometimes folders within it. And what you got to do is basically go in, and you're going to have a map So I open up the map folder and I right click on map boards. I add a board and it tells me, come up with a name for a board. So I could put a name test. Then I'd have to find an image. So I'd need a graphic file, like a JPEG file on my computer. If I hit select there, it'll open a dialog box for my PC or my Mac, and I point it to that JPEG and I hit OK. And now that is in the module. And so that's the kind of interface you're going to be doing. You're not necessarily going to have to be writing code, but you are going to have to navigate this tree of properties and traits. And that's where it can get a little intimidating for players or for users. So I think if you watch my YouTube videos, that'll help you to navigate that. But this kind of gives you an idea of what to expect, maybe.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much. I think without further ado, we can call it a wrap. Joel, thank you so much for kind of showing up and teaching people Vassal. I know it's kind of intimidating to look at, but again, I can't stress as someone who's been converted to believer status, how handy it is.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me. And yeah, you guys have a great day.
Take it easy, everyone. Bye-bye.